It's like we go to church so we can get our process straightened out. So religion, that's what religion wants. They can control our process. And when we talk about the veil being on us, they don't want the veil torn in half. They don't want it ripped off of you. They want just enough in it so that you can get a peek. So what it keeps you after then is the things that you see, but it keeps you away from the identity. You hear what I'm saying? It might give you a little glimpse of an image, but it'll never allow you to be like that. That likeness and image thing is very important to us. So again, your life is not some process to be controlled by religion, to be controlled by tradition. Your life is an instantaneous proclamation of God's marvelous light that says, before the foundation of the world, I foreordained you. He has made us righteous. He's made us holy. He has given us power and authority to rule. This is the whole Paracletus, the Paraclete. This is the Holy Spirit. So this is another one in places that, whether or not we realize it, that we have an issue with, because that's the one place we can't get to. We don't get to Paraclete. We don't get to Holy Spirit, because most of us, honestly, in most churches that I know of, are still hung in the middle. So we was happy to step away from God and get with Jesus, but we're not too sure about moving on to what Jesus said was even greater than him. Now, that's the part of it that most people don't like. We can't even get on board with the whole thing where he says, you're going to do the things that I've done even greater. We can't get on board with that. We don't even see how that's possible, because we're hung on Jesus. And Jesus already went and sat down. He's done. He already did everything he was supposed to do. And he left us with something greater. He could never be on this earth with us and continue to walk with us and give us what he had to leave and give us. They couldn't be in the same place. He had to leave that part inside of us because it was greater than what he could be on the outside of us. Think about what he did with the disciples. He ordained them for a period, and they would go do these things, and then they would come back. And then he would lay it on them again, and they would go do these things, and they would come back. And what he told me was, in his word, is that he's going to go away so he can put something in me so that he will never again have to give it to me. It is a gift that will stay with me forever. And I will be able to achieve and accomplish all the things that he did and even greater. God put answers in us. You know this, right? The answer's in us. This is not something that we need to ask for continually. It is a place for us to be in touch with so that we know. And this was a little weird to me because I had to really think about this, and because right back from the very beginning, God asked Adam to name all the animals. All right? So do you think all those names just randomly came to Adam? I'm going to tell you what I believe, that they were placed there by God, and he chose them accordingly, because that's what he knew. He didn't know anything else. So what God put in him was what he used. He didn't have anything else. He didn't have a veil. He knew his image, and he knew the likeness that he was created after. It's in us. And it wasn't until he made his own choice that it went sideways. Everybody knows it went sideways then. That's... So the veil is to be torn. So again, we see the light and rediscover who we are. And if we do that, we will choose his will accordingly. We'll quit choosing ours. So our focus is not on us. It's about looking through that veil. And what we see will cause us to be exactly what he created us to be. We're not looking to do anything. Just get a focus. You kind of get this thing that all is on the inside, so you don't need to control the outside. Right? I mean, you can't control the outside to change the inside. Doesn't work that way. This is what the law has been doing from the very beginning. Hasn't worked. The first fathers were not like this. They performed things the way they were supposed to be performed, but this thing has been corrupted. It's been darkened. It's been veiled. It's been taken away from us. There are things that we no longer know. This is taking a whole generation away, and when that generation forgets, then you can give them whatever history you want. This is happening in our world right now. So the inside rules the outside, right? The outside manifest this, as this is the restoration. It manifests this. I'll try to get through just a couple more things here. Does anybody know anything about moths, millers, butterflies, how they come about? So they like lay an egg, right? Egg hatches, makes this ugly, stupid-looking worm. It makes a cocoon around itself, covers itself up, right? You know what it does once it covers itself up? Nobody knows, because it's in there doing its own thing. You don't know what it's doing in there. You only know what it does when it comes out. It is a trick question. Because if you know, that's like, and I'm sure scientists, they know what's going on in there, the whole metamorphosis thing that's going on. So do we know what this covering is for us? This is like Jesus. This is what Jesus did for us. Jesus gave us that ability. We got covered up. So he comes in and covers it up, right? So now you're covered by Jesus. Now what? What's going on inside? Again, nobody can see. But there's a transformation going on in there. And I say that word transformation because that's what he says, that we're supposed to be transformed. So the inside has got a transformation going on, and in short order, it's going to manifest on the outside. Because the covering that's on them is going to be split open, and then it's going to be shown what this thing's been doing all along, and it's going to show what it truly is. All right? When it breaks out of its covering, it's born again. Because it already came from an egg. Now it's hatched. Now it's went to a cocoon. Now it's born again. And it's going to be born again to what it's always been. And from the very beginning, this is what God put in this thing to be. All right? And when I say this being born again thing, I'm not talking about being born twice. All right? This is a kind of the conversation that Jesus had with Nicodemus, and being born twice is not what he's talking about. But being born again into what you've always been. So before you were the egg, you were something. Then you had to come down to earth, you got laid in an egg, you turned into this ugly caterpillar looking thing. Then Jesus had to come and say, hey, I know what you are. And I'm going to cover you up, and I'm going to give you an opportunity here to let this spirit manifest. See, I want you to understand what he also did with this. Jesus said, I got to go. You're coming out. Because what has been put in you is going to get greater than me. The creature that's going to be born out of that cocoon is bigger than the cocoon. Do we kind of understand this whole thing we got going here? So this is not about what the world has tried to conform you to, because that's what the world did. You were laid as an egg just like everything else, And then the world said, oh, look, you're an ugly worm. You're going to be an ugly worm the rest of your life. You can never be anything greater than what you are. You're going to crawl around on your belly. You're going to eat some leaves. This is all you're ever going to be. And for a long time, we kind of believe that. But then there comes a time inside of us when God talks about this, drawing a man, dragging you to the truth. When it says draw, that's what it means. He's going to drag you to the truth. Then it's up to you. So then do you make the cocoon, or do you just eat for a little while longer and die? Because that's what will happen to you. If what is supposed to be a moth or a butterfly or something does not do what it's supposed to do, its life cycle will end short. It'll never reproduce, so it will never do what God told Adam and Eve to do. It'll never do any of that things. It'll starve to death eventually. It'll just eat itself up and die because it won't go through what it's supposed to go through. It refuses. Sound familiar? It refuses to be covered by Jesus. It's going to wither away and die, and it will never reach its potential. Now, if you're a worm and you get covered by Jesus and you was to crawl out of it early, you're probably still going to die knowing the covering. I don't know, if that's okay or not, but so again, this is not about letting the world conform you, but it's about being transformed. If I had time, I'd go in and get into 2 Corinthians and show you this, where when Jesus talks about this, that his last thing that he really wanted you to get a hold of was he left the Spirit for you. And I know, like I said, it probably hurts a lot of people's feelings. That's Jesus only. But the same as Jesus came with the Father's proclamation and with the Father's program in the kingdom, this is exactly what the Spirit does for him. So if we are hung just on Jesus alone, then we're going to miss out on what the Spirit has. But if we could get to the place where the Spirit is, then the Spirit would witness back to Jesus, and Jesus would witness back to God, and God would witness to the Spirit. And we could have a full cycle in this. We would have a full being laid on the earth, being put in the cocoon, being born, and the reproduction just over and over and over and over and over again. Because this is the way that it's supposed to be. That our image and our likeness is so important for us. And that our focus anywhere else is a waste of our time. An absolute waste of our time. If there's anything that goes anywhere else, it'll be led by the Spirit. And the Bible tells us that it will be the Spirit that leads us into all truth. It also says that at some point that we have that no man teach us, but the Spirit. And it, like I said, we've talked about this. It doesn't mean that men won't teach you. It means that if people are not being led by the Spirit to teach you, you're going to have to quit listening to them. You're going to have to quit listening to a lot of the religious stuff. It's probably hurt some people's feelings too. Heaven is not our home. I know we would like to think that, but we're from heaven. Jesus is not going to come down there and get everybody to go back up to heaven, and we're just going to rule in heaven. We were made to rule and have dominion, and it will be on an earth. And we will bring a new world. We're not all going to just run in heaven and spend the rest of our lives worshiping God. That's not what my Bible teaches me at all. We have another purpose. If that was the only purpose, God could have just created more angels. Everybody would have just been happy. So there's some things that we're going to have to turn loose of. There's some things that we need to get rid of. And you guys don't have to believe me about all these things that I say, but you guys are supposed to be walking this out for yourselves.